But we can find many other examples if we choose. We sometimes see the Pope and other members of the Catholic clergy wearing Saturno hats, for example, and this is in honor of the god Saturn. Most other times priests wear mitre hats, and these are connected to Dagon, another type of Babylonian god. Here's a depiction of Dagon alongside the Pope with his mitre. Here you may also see that the Pope is holding a staff called the Twisted Cross. Roman Catholic author Piers Compton writes about it in his book, saying, "The Twisted Cross is a sinister symbol used by Satanists in the 6th century that had been revived at the time of Vatican II. This was a bent or broken cross on which was displayed a repulsive and distorted figure of Christ, which the black magicians and sorcerers of the Middle Ages had made use of to represent the biblical term Mark of the Beast." Yet not only Paul VI, but his successors, the two John Pauls, carried that object and held it up to be revered by the crowds, who had not the slightest idea that it stood for Antichrist. So the staff being held in the Pope's hand is an open representation of the Antichrist, but only if you're initiated with the knowledge to really see that. This is the nature of the occult, things that are in the open but whose true meanings are concealed. This was never more true than in March 2000, when Pope John Paul II preached an updated Sermon on the Mount at the altar of Chorazim in Israel. Here he sat under an inverted cross, one of the most potent and disgusting symbols of Satanism and black magic, under the pretense that it represents Peter, who was crucified upside down. Once more he holds up the twisted cross depicting the Antichrist for the adoration of the crowd right in front of it. Behind them all is a Christ-like mural displaying the words that he is coming soon, but as we'll discover later, this character for who they wait is in fact the Antichrist. These pictures represent perfect examples of how occult symbolism always has two meanings, a false public and acceptable front, and then a true hidden meaning behind it. This is another common symbol of Catholicism, the XP or the Chi Rho. The false and light explanation is that it represents Christ, as the first two letters in Christ's name are X and P in Greek. Now this is an extremely tenuous link at the best of times, but Albert Pike in the Freemason handbook Morals and Dogma reveals the true origin of this symbol. The active and passive principles of the universe were commonly symbolized by the generative parts of man and woman. The Indian lingam was the union of both, as were the boat and mast and the point within a circle, all of which expressed the same philosophical idea as to the union of the two great causes of nature which concur, one actively and the other passively, in the generation of all beings. What he's basically saying is that it's another expression of the point within the circle we looked at earlier. It represents sexual union. Then there is the Vatican's crest. This is clearly a serpent or dragon, which is the symbol for Satan himself. Just a couple more to finish. In Rome there was a male god called Janus, who had a female partner called Cybele, from which we get the word celibacy. Cybele was always depicted wearing a tower as a crown, which was on account of her being the first to erect towers in cities, and this helps identify her as Semiramis under a new name. Janus was always depicted as carrying a key, because he was considered to be the grand mediator between heaven and earth. He was worshipped as the god of doors and hinges, and was called the grand opener and shutter, meaning the door of heaven would not be open to your prayers unless you first invoked Janus. The worship of Janus prevailed in Asia Minor at the same time the Lord commanded John to write in Revelation, "To the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, These are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens no one can shut, and what he shuts no one can open." God is specifically proclaiming here that he is the Lord and the one true God, who alone opens and shuts the door of heaven, not Janus or Cybele or any equivalent. As the head of the mysteries on earth, the Supreme Pontiff held similar keys which were symbolic of his spiritual and earthly authority, hence the image of the two keys on the shield. One key is gold, representing the power to bind and loose in heaven, while the other is silver, symbolizing the power to bind and loose on earth. The Supreme Pontiff was therefore given the name the Interpreter because he was the link between heaven and earth. In Chaldee, the original language of the mysteries, the word interpreter becomes Peter. Thus we see how the keys of Janus and Cybele would become known as the keys of Peter. And this is the origin of the unbiblical myth perpetuated by Catholics that the biblical Peter is waiting at the gates to heaven, ready to admit or turn away individuals who would seek to enter. It simply comes down to a bit of wordplay with the Chaldean word for interpreter. The repetition of Hail Marys as a mantra to absolve yourself of sins is also from paganism. Jesus warned about it when he said, "When you pray, don't babble on and on as people of other religions do. They think their prayers are answered merely by repeating their words again and again." In later times the popes would arrogantly claim to be infallible, something that is true only of God. By setting themselves up as gods, they, like Nimrod, consolidated their power by claiming to have spiritual and divine authority as well as political authority. Do your own explorations and you will find a lot more that give the game away. I've spent so long in Catholicism because it's important we realize the Babylonian mysteries are not some ancient belief system that died way back in the mist of time. The Babylonian religion is alive and well today, in this case disgustingly and confusingly wrapped in a cloak of Christianity. Christians are often confused about how we should relate to Catholicism, and many see it as a legitimate form of Christianity, and there are ecumenical movements today that are capitalizing on that ignorance. Many Christians feel like they have to apologize for the Crusades and the Inquisitions, even though true Christians were often the ones on the receiving end of those, as we shall soon see. Catholicism is the largest religion in the world today. The second largest is Islam, and we'll look at that next.